Okay, we're here for the budget meeting. It is 1:35. I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so I guess I hand it off to you, Mike.
Yes, sir, and good to see you, and
Tim?
good to be here for these budget hearings. And I will subsequently turn it over to Tim Anderson, our finance director, who has put together a robust report for us about our revenues and the budget for this year.
Is there something to switch the screens? Because it's not, that's not my screen that's showing. I don't know if it's that. And there's not some, I mean, you're not sure how to.
That's why I asked if you were hooked up and said you might, but if not,
Good. Jennifer, I could reach out to IS and see if they'll, because I know it's probably just a switcher that. Okay.
Is there anything you could start on, Tim, without that?
I've got a slideshow, so.
Could you just come down and plug into this?
Probably.
It's just a laptop now, we could try it. It's just a plug-in,
yeah, he said if you could.
I'm willing to give it a shot. Pull this out. See, there you go. You have an HDMI on it, we'll see. Doesn't work, they can fix it. He might not be here for a while.
Got a Snickers bar?
So you worked for yourself for 12 years. Try it.
It's a company issue.
Reloaded it.
What's that?
Somebody reloaded
Here we go.
IS, am I in or what?
Job to promote you.
That's right. You don't think what? Well, when they come, we can move back up.
If we're ready, I can begin.
Go ahead.
So this is our public hearing on revenue sources for the 2024 budget. This is per RCW 8455-120. And that RCW is on here. The probably the most pertinent part is number one. Just talking about a taxing district other than the state that collects regular levies must hold a public hearing on revenue sources for the district's following year's current expense budget. The hearing must include consideration of possible increases in property tax revenues and must be held prior to the time the taxing district levies the taxes or makes the request to have the taxes levied. There's more, but that's the gist of it. We're just supposed to hold a hearing on revenues. So our 2024 working budget. So this includes all revenues other than, it doesn't include revenues and other finance sources, but it doesn't include beginning fund balance. So just to kind of give you a view of where our revenues come from within current expense. Property taxes, it was initially at $12 million. And this is, on the next slide, I think it shows, there's some percentages. I think it's 30% of the budget. And then You have sales and use taxes at 11,337,000. Other finance sources, another big chunk at 4,866,000. And this, the other financing sources, so those are, to a large extent, it's transfers in from other funds, which there's a couple funds that rely heavily on sales tax in those funds. And so ultimately, it comes into current expense not as a sales tax, but really that's where what it's coming from. So we collect money in our 255 fund, our criminal justice, the .03 fund for our debt, for our bond on the jail. We got a bond for the jail and software, One Solution software, and then we pay the bonds, and then the excess from that we transfer into current expense, and that's a sales tax that we collect in there, as well as in our mental health fund. We collect, as of last year, we started collecting sales tax. It also has, we get property tax in there as well. But we do a budget transfer of, it's budgeted at $400,000. It hasn't been that historically, but it's been a little bit less than that. But just once again, it's so really when you're looking at sales tax, it'd be almost combining both of these categories together. So as you can see, our current expense is heavily dependent on property taxes and sales and use taxes. This just gives a little bit more, not as easy to see. It's same information that I have in that other chart.
Can we go back to that chart one more time? So below the total miscellaneous, there's no recognition of what that orange is. That sliver there of the orange. What's that? Or brown, whatever it is.
Fines and penalties.
Okay.
I don't know why that got deleted off there, but nice catch, Commissioner.
Well, just curious.
So like I said, this is the same information. This is going from multiple years. One of the things that I just thought was interesting from this, so that chart was looking at the 2024 working budget, which this has, there's a 2023 variance, the working budget for 2023 versus 2024, and you can see the variances for the different categories. That these are the categories that were summed on that other page. One of the things that's interesting on here is just looking at the sales and use taxes versus property taxes through the years. It started out with a pretty big gap back in 2018, 6.7 million versus 9.3, but the sales and use taxes has been catching up, and likely will be passing it pretty soon. So we've had great sales and use tax years, especially of late. I think there's probably going to be some slowdown in that, as I'll talk about in here, but it's been it's ultimately becoming more and more of our overall budget. So the heavily reliant on current expense, heavily reliant on property and sales and use taxes. Property tax, 30% of revenues, and that includes other financing sources, which would be like transfers, but it doesn't include beginning fund balance. And it's sales and use tax, 28%. The criminal justice transfer, which ultimately comes from sales tax, 11% of revenues. Mental health transfer, which there's some sales tax, some property tax in there. It's more heavily on the sales tax side moving forward, but there's an accumulation of property tax money from current and years back. So approximately 70% of the current expense budget is property and sales and use taxes. I am proposing a $670,000 in decreases to sales and use taxes of what we have budgeted, just because just updating trends, and I'm just not seeing, it looks like they're starting to tail off, and so just trying to get those in line to what I'm estimating they likely will come in at, I think we need to go down some. And then we had the property taxes we had in the preliminary budget to the board at $12 million. Got the property tax numbers from the assessors now, and now the pre any 1% road shift, it would be, there'd be an additional 26,732 higher than the preliminary budget for that. So if you account for those two things, the property and sales and use taxes would account for 69% of the budget. There's other, other things that are in the budget. There are some of the, next biggest category, the charges for services, that would be recording fees, vehicle licensing, the fees we charge for inmates that when we house, like City of Pasco's inmates, there's passport fees, things like that would be some of the other. And then this green for intergovernmental, this would be grants as well as there's other state funds. It's essentially state and federal funds that we'd be getting in that, whether it's grants or other sources of revenue. So we've had some pretty good years here recently. One of the reasons for that is we've been flooded with some pretty big grants here recently. In 2020 we received $7.1 million in CARES Act grants. And then in 2021 and 22, we received $9.2 million to a total of $18.5 million in ARPA grants. So these are all COVID-related money. So not all of these went to current expense. Like the ARPA money wasn't placed in current expense to begin with. It was in a separate fund. But ultimately, there was certainly some benefit to current expense because we did use some of that money to pay for things that were needed within current expense. And I'm not hearing of any new. We're getting towards the end of the ARPA money we have, and I'm not hearing of any new COVID related or anything, any large funding sources like this moving forward. I mean, it certainly could happen. There could be new legislation, but at this point in time, I don't think that we can bank on anything like that. So this is our main retail sales and use tax that's collected in the treasurer's office. As of the same time that I did the projection, which was end of October in 2022, this line would have been trending between 6.9 and 10.1 million as the projection for the 2024's budget, and that's based on essentially if I would have gone back a year from now, sales and use tax was going great. We were the money was coming in, and it was just it was about as good as it had ever been here for sales and use tax. Updating those numbers for now, a year later, I'm seeing right between $6 and $8.1 million for the budget. So this is $935,000 lower on the low end of the range and almost $2 million on the high end of the range. The 10 million versus 10.1 versus 8.1. As far as our expectations for it. In 2023, we had budgeted $6.7 million. It's currently in the budget at 6.8. I do think that we can go up to 7.1 fairly conservatively. It's mid-range of what the trend is currently showing. So I think we can go slightly up on that. This is another sales tax we collect in our aids to other governments within current expense, juvenile correctional facility sales. At the same time in 2022, this was trending between 2.3 and 3.4 million dollars for the 2024 budget. It's now trending between 2.9 and almost 3. So it's this one's actually a little bit higher. It was budgeted at 2.7 in the 2023 budget. For 2024, we've got it at 3 million. So I think this one should probably be decreased a little bit. I think I'd gone maybe a little bit too aggressive early on, but I think we probably should come down just slightly on this one to 2.9. And then our transfer in from the criminal justice sales tax fund for where we pay our bond from. At the same time in 2022, this was trending between 4 million and 5.8 million for the 2024 budget. It's now trending between 3.5 and 4.9. And I really saw some, these last few months really have brought the numbers down considerably. It's lower by 481,000 on the low end and 878,000 on the high end of the range. And a lot of that really is just within the last few months. We just haven't been getting what was, what the estimate was. And so it's been bringing that number down. This was budgeted at 4.6 million in 2023. We currently have it in there as 5,140,000. I think that it probably should go down to $4.2 million based on the new numbers. So a drop of almost $1 million. So this is kind of a snapshot of where we're at right now. We had a preliminary budget deficit of 747,000. So that's revenues that were submitted by departments, and then expenditures, which would have included step increases and just essentially baseline expenditures. So you get what you were given before. So we started out negative 747, and then I had mentioned previously the 26,732 that we hadn't captured previously for the property taxes. Revenue decreases, I went over several of those just now. There's the sales and use tax numbers, $670,000 net decrease. I'm really thinking that we need to go down about 988,000. So there was a prosecutor salary. This started last year where and I'm not sure where it stemmed from, but we had essentially double what we should have had for the revenue budget in this. I didn't look at it in depth to find where the problem resulted from, but essentially we were budgeting to recover the prosecutor's entire salary when we only get half of it. And so reducing that down, we need to reduce that by 88,000. Investment interest, we've got a budget at 1.5 million. I think we can go up to probably 1.6 fairly conservatively. Beginning fund balance, just based on how we're ending this year with revenues trending down and just forecasting things out. I updated the monthly budget at the end of October, and I'm seeing about a decrease of $330,000 of estimate to end the year. Contingency decrease, I decreased that. We had that originally in at 1.7 million. I decreased that by 582,000. So that would get us to a current deficit of $1,125,703. Then you get to requests that have come in. And so this is not all of the requests by any means. This is just a snapshot of some of the bigger requests that have been made to the current expense budget. This is 1,318,418. So if you did include all of these, that would bring us to a budget deficit of 2,444,122. And certainly, I think that some of these, if not all, are ones we, pretty much need to do. OPD, we've been seeing. We've been increasing the budget. I know there was a recent transfer of $250,000 to OPD just here recently, but I think before that, I think there was another increase. So we know costs are going up there, and I know there's talks of petitioning to the state to get more funding for that, but at this time that hasn't happened. For the disability board, this is one person that we're paying stuff on right now for the disability board. We've been incurring large expenses, and so this is kind of this is a known cost at this point in time. Even like the Microsoft 365, I think my understanding is the the licenses for the current Microsoft are expiring soon, I think, and so I think we're having to switch over to the Microsoft 365. And so there's, pretty large costs for that, whether we could get away with doing part of it 1 year and part of it another year, hard to say. I wouldn't be able to speak to that. There's other costs like the professional services, medical services. I know that Commander Harmon and the sheriff were in here talking about this. They were wanting 24/7 nursing, I think it was, on the weekends and stuff. So, which would be part of this cost. So I don't know if whether we can get away with not doing that, or if we if we can get away with not doing it, and how much that would save us, because there could still be some increased costs even without doing that, just from general increases to medical costs. The insurance, this is one that hadn't been requested in previous years, and it was highlighted before, and that is a request this year, and so it's kind of a known. It had been budgeted, I think, at $80,000 previously, so that's our insurance and costs have been going up at a pretty high rate, and so I think it was like 20% this last year, if I remember correctly, and so there's a lot of these costs that are pretty solid costs. I'm not going to say that everyone is, but there's certainly some pretty. I don't think that we're going to be able to get away with funding some of this stuff just based on things that's been going on in the county. So solutions, I was showing, the different ranges for the revenues and stuff. You could certainly go higher on the revenue, but it seems like if anything, it's trending down. And so I was going mid-range on all of those forecasts. And so I'd be a little leery of that, because ultimately if you don't hit it, your fund balance is gonna take a hit because of that. Salary and benefit savings, we budgeted $700,000 in salary and benefit savings. Essentially, we moved that money to ending fund balance. We estimate how much vacancies we're going to have, and we move that to ending fund balance to not spend. Essentially, we know we plan on not spending it based on that, and so we move it to ending fund balance. Well, even above that $700,000, we were an additional $737,000 under budget. So we were effectively $1.4 million through October under budget. So we'll be over 1.5 by the end of the year. So, you could do more vacancies estimates or whatever, and then just spend those dollars. The risk on that is if you do that and then we don't have the same vacancies we had this year, you're in the same boat as where your fund balance is going to be lower. Other changes, you could do hiring freezes or other more drastic measures, but the hiring freeze would guarantee some of those vacancies savings. You could also do a transfer of reserves. We approximately have $2.1 million right now. There's an infant loan out to county roads right now, but after they'd paid that back, we'd have $2.1 million. We could lower ending fund balance, but that's not a long-term option, because ultimately we want to be building up. A lot of these aren't necessarily great choices based on where we're at right now, but you could lower ending fund balance. And it might get you through 1 year, but ultimately, we're seeing expenses outpacing revenues at this point, and so it's a short-term fix. You could do no approvals, but we're still at a deficit already with, and likely some of those, many are our needs. Example, OPD costs increasing, the disability boards. So there's some that, we already know are real costs. So, it seems like we would have to fund at least some of them. And then there's property taxes. Current year, you could do the 1% bank capacity road shift. Future years, levy lid lift, as well as the options listed above, the 1% bank capacity and road shifts. These are possible solutions. And then as far as so that gets into the property tax. This chart was put together by the assessor's office. Thank you, Fenny. And this just maybe kind of hard to see, but it gives different scenarios as far as, so this is the baseline. No 1%. It includes the new construction, which ultimately winds up being about, we had 504,000 of new construction, but then there's, part of it goes to a TIF allocation. And so it winds up being about $370,000 of new construction. So if you did no 1%, new construction, no road shift, you'd have a collection of $12,026,732. And then it also, each of these scenarios shows the effect to the road department and what they would get. So in this scenario, the road department would get almost $4 million. Version 2, you do a 1% increase plus bank capacity, plus new construction, no road shift. So that would give us an additional 115,000, which is the 1%, and 19,000 of bank capacity would bring us up to 12,161,361. Road department would also go up because of their banked 1% and bank capacity. They have 142,000 of bank capacity. So they'd go up to 4.2 million. And then there's other scenarios with ever increasing, all of these are 1% plus bank capacity, new construction, and then $350,000 road shift, 500,000, 1 million, and $2 million to get us to, trying to get us to being balanced. And it showed, ultimately the impact to current expense. So you start at just over 12 million. With these, you'd have 12,500,000 with 350,000 road shift, 12,661,000 with the 500,000, and these are the actual collections to current expense, and then the effect to the road department. So in this scenario with $2 million road shift, you have a $14 million collection in current expense and a $2.1 million collection in the road department. That was all I have for you.
Mr. Beaton.
Can I ask a quick question, and you can speak to this? So I know a number of years ago, I think it's road diversion versus road shift. Can you speak to that? I mean, I know we used to do that. I mean, sometimes we get hung up on road shift and we moved kind of some of those costs into the current expense, and we don't represent those anymore. I don't know what the impact of that was. I know why we went away from it, but how much of that is the department covering what would be the typical costs? Can you speak to that, I guess?
I don't know what the true cost. I mean, we were doing it was a budgeted amount that we were doing in the past, which I think was, I want to say it was $470,000 that we were doing before. Whether we could have captured more by that or not, I'm not positive. I mean, there may have been more costs incurred that we could have done, but we budgeted a certain amount and collected that amount and not anything more.
If you understand them, you can explain to them the difference on the two, so they understand that if we do this through a road shift, I mean, is it net the same, or
I think they ultimately, I don't know if I should speak to that. I think the assessor may have a better better understanding of shift versus diversion.
We have nothing to do with on the diversions.
Okay.
Well, my understanding, and this is just for the sake of discussion, but I mean, the diversion was that the roads carried the cost of the road patrolling and the things that took place in the county, right? So it was legitimate costs of the current expense typically bore, and it would, and so, but there wasn't an auditing issue on it, and so then they just eliminated it, and sometimes you can recapture that, though.
I think it may ultimately really be the same net effect, which is moving money from roads to current expense. You're trying to show the more of the true cost of things by doing that, but at the same time, really you're just moving money from, I mean, whether County Roads is paying for a service or whether we shift the money, it's still the same effect of the County Roads sending money to current expense.
But for these two who weren't here, what I'm saying is when there is typically a desire for a zero-cost road shift, I want them to understand in the past, there actually was money that passed because there is direct cost to current expense that is typically borne by roads, and so that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, we were billing for, in the past, we were billing for road patrolling as well as, it was like sprinkler patrol or, but road monitoring services. In short, that the sheriff's office was billing to county roads.
We haven't done it in so long, I'm not even sure if you guys are familiar with the terminology of a road diversion versus anyway, I just wanted that to be on the plane.
Can we get a printout of that right there,
Yes, sir.
please?
The thing,
The whole
the whole package.
presentation, yes.
I can do
Yes,
that.
John?
So if I can add, on the bottom of each one of those, you'll also see what the levy rate impact would be. So on the first one or two of them, it goes down to like 70 cents from our current 85 cents where we're at right now, or 86. So that's the nice thing about that chart at the very bottom. Third line up from the very bottom will show you what the levy rate would be for version 1 for the county, and then the roads, and then version 2, version 3. So all the way over to version 5, and I'm not advocating any one of them, it's just we're pointing it out to you. Version 4 and 5, if you take a look, I guess it's version 5 would be the other one, clear over 6. You'll see that the levy rate is at 83 cents where we're currently at 85. So the levy rate still drops for those that are not affected by the road department. The road department drops from 91 down to 50 cents per thousand because they're not getting the amount of money they would, of course, for the roads because it's being shifted. Therefore, the county residents are not being hit on the tax portion of that. So they are getting a break on their taxes because they're not getting that service of the roads for that amount. So just so when you get those enlarged or printed for yourself, you'll be able to kind of understand what those are.
Thanks to the assessor's office for this great chart.
Questions? Yeah.
There's a lot of information on it.
I know the election's not certified, but have we factored in the hospital district 1 that looks like it's going to pass? Is that in this?
This has nothing to do with the hospital district. This is only the county's portion and the county's budget. Hospital District 1 will submit theirs, and that'll be for the overall taxation or levy piece of it. But the counties, we can only deal with just the county budget for the county levy rate. So we're at 85 cents. Most of the county is somewhere between $8.50 and $9 by the time you add in schools and the library and the cities and the, you know, all the different taxing districts or entities that make that up. So they asked for, I believe, what was it, 30 cents for Hospital District 1. I believe they asked for a 30 cent per thousand.
I don't think it was that much. I'm not sure.
20 or 30 cents. So maybe it was 20 cents they asked for. But that will only impact the parcels and the
Right.
districts out there. So, yeah, and it doesn't figure into any of your budget stuff for the county.
But the people will be taxed on it.
They will,
Yes.
and the 4th of December, you will see what all the different taxing districts are asking for in their budget. That has to be presented to you. It has to be to your office by the last day of November. I went over those dates with Mike, and some of them are already coming in. And then you will get those to be able to approve their budgets on the 4th of December. And that comes from the commissioner's office, from your office. Same as with the school bond, Commissioner. I have no idea. They're saying that's going to be about 31 cents. It may be a little less, a little more. We won't know until we get their budgets for those that are within the Pasco School District. But by percentage, that's a considerable one, dropping from, say, 85 down into the low 70s. I was speaking to you that I thought it would be mid-70s on a conservative side of it when I was talking, but it could be as low as the low 70s, or as high as like 83 instead of 85, depending on what you do with road shifts.
Good job on the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and I was just trying to highlight some of the, we've received a lot of grant funds in recent years, and then, I just, we just don't seem to be collecting sales tax at it's not increasing at the same rate as it was there for a number, through a lot of the COVID times, right after COVID and right afterwards, it was going at, growing at very fast rates, and I think we're seeing a slowdown in that now.
Well, and I think it's because of the high inflation. We've got families out there right now that are just trying to make sure they keep the food on the table and the heat on. So it's getting to be more difficult for everybody, and we're seeing families tighten their belt, and I think we need to do the same.
Can you find a difference between the sales tax collected locally and that's what's being collected?
That's a treasurer question. They may be able to tell the difference. I don't see any of that information, but I think they're able to get into where it's coming from on their end.
I was just curious if online sales were, a lot of the online sales during COVID were up, and that's why we had so much tax revenue collected.
I do think that is correct. I'm not sure. I don't know if people are buckling down now because of the high inflation and not spending as much or what, but we definitely, it seems to be slowing down anyway.
We're not looking for any decisions today. This is just a presentation, correct?
I mean, ultimately, it's a public hearing too, where the public can comment.
Is
I
there
think
anybody
so,
on the
but-
phone that has, nope.
Chair, permission to ask John,
Absolutely.
John, I happened to meet with Cherie out of your office today, and she talked about new construction. Can you talk a little bit about, she said that the rate is not slowing down in Franklin County, so I guess my point being that I know you've talked quite a bit about catching the new construction to help
Here, so
contribute
at
to our
least can be
revenue.
heard on the
Yeah.
tape if people do. And I've mentioned it, this year, what we were able to pick up was 580 million in new construction. Now, granted, there's still a portion of that that is Darigold, and the
Right.
county doesn't get the direct cost of that. They get indirect benefits, but not direct benefits. We probably still left on the table a good 10%. Probably between 50 and 70 million that was still left on the table we couldn't get to. That new construction, the state wants it certified by the 15th of September. We certified last week because I tried to get as much as we could, not letting it fall through the cracks. Because every penny of that builds on the budget for every taxing district, not just the counties, but every taxing district. So,
And John, we capture that at our levy rate, right? Or close to
oh,
1%?
no, new construction is separate from the levy rate.
What's the percent? It looks like around 1% that we capture.
Well, you pull up 1% and then you have to divide it by your levy rate.
Okay,
So the levy
gotcha.
rate was 85 cents. A year ago, it was at 90. The year before that, you were at $1.10. So the lower the levy rate goes, the less dollars you get from the new construction because it's divided out by that levy rate. Next year, if you go with number one, it'd be at 70% instead of 85%.
And the reality is, I mean, we capture new construction. The benefit is really a year later, right? So we capture it.
No, we
it's-
capture it this year. You get to count this year's in your budget. You get to count that money. It is in,
Thank you, sir.
well, I'd have to put my glasses on again, but
Thank you,
it's
sir. Appreciate you.
400, no, let's see. Which line is there?
So point being,
New
what we
construction was
what we
504
capture.
minus about 130.
So what we capture in 2023, we get to allocate in 2024.
Well, it becomes the taxes paid in 2024. So therefore, it's for your 2024 budget.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to make clear to the
It's not collected
public.
this year. It's
Right.
collected next year and
Bless
goes
you.
for your budget next year. Correct. On that. And we are not seeing a slowdown. As far as what we have to do, okay, in our office, we're not seeing a slowdown. Massive apartments out near Road 100, all of that new stuff, well, basically, they had no percentage by the end of July. By next July, when we pick it up, there's gonna be a massive percentage. Gonna be a big, big percentage on Darigold, much more that's gonna be done. And a lot of other constructions that are gonna be taking place. So I do not anticipate a decrease, I anticipate an increase in new construction. Not all of that will be a cash benefit to the county because the TIF portion
Yeah,
goes
it's
to
in
the
that
port,
tip,
to the
that Road
cities.
100 area is that tip area.
Right. And so what we will be doing, though, is the city and the port have agreed for me to bill them for the services that we provide just on those parcels. And it's just our cost, okay? It's not like the county get a bunch of tax. But we will recoup next year, some decent monies, but I can't even guesstimate what it would be, so we didn't put it in receivables because we don't have any idea yet. Because we don't know how much those areas will have for new construction, how many hours it's gonna take and all of that. We just know it's gonna be an increase.
So remind me again, what's the percentage that we're missing on new construction, would you say?
We missed a good 10% this year. Last year, it was 1,300 parcels, and this year, we broke it down not by numbers, but by dollars, because the numbers are kind of hard to tell, but and I don't have a graph to
Right,
show you or
right.
breakdown, but just by looking at it and looking at the ones that we couldn't get to, we're looking at about 10% that we couldn't get to. Now, for us, that equates for the county's budget somewhere between 50 and 70,000 in the county's budget, besides the money that we did bring in. But that also equates to probably between 70 and 100,000 that the city won't get. And then you've got other districts, the school districts, you've got, so it equates to, a few $100,000 just because of that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we never can get that in new construction again because you have like a 12-month
12-month
period.
window.
To capture it.
Correct.
And
We
if you
can't
do
go
that,
back
then
and
it's
get those
just- then it's
1,300.
lost.
We can't go back and get these. It's not like we could throw double the staff at it and pick this back up. You can't do that. You lose it, you lose it.
So Chair, permission to speak, procedurally,
Take a recess.
I think we should take a recess.
Let's recess for a few minutes here. I don't know how long. Commissioner Mullen, I think, had an emergency
Yeah.
phone call. So let's recess for 10 minutes. come back from our 10-minute recess, and we are back to live meeting. So go ahead with the, you were talking there about the new construction.
So, and I'm not sure where to even pick up on there, but we will have a continuation next year of new construction that I believe will exceed this year and exceed last year. I don't anticipate it not exceeding both these last 2 years, and those years were more than double of the previous year on that. So, and I don't have, you know, a PowerPoint to show you on that, but we were holding very consistently in the mid 200s to high 200 millions, and then we jumped right to 560s and now 580s, and I would be very surprised if we weren't north of 600 million next year on new construction.
So I got a question for you, John, and I think Mr. Beaton does too, but, you know, you went through it before our break, and you said actually to Franklin County, it would be 50 to 60,000 to us, correct? And in your budget request, you're saying in order to get all this new construction captured, we need more employees.
We need one more appraiser
I
for me
know.
to keep up with where we're currently at, correct?
And so what I'm asking is, since there are so many other players, I shouldn't say players, but beneficiaries to this work that you're doing, why aren't they chipping in to help us get more employees in your office so that we can get all this collected so that, because with that 50 to 60,000 to Franklin County won't even pay the salary.
Well, that's in addition to all the increase that we worked an extra 2.5 months on to try to get you even more, because we wouldn't have been close to that. So statutorily, the only thing we can bill for, or the only thing the assessor's office can go after other taxing entities for, is the TIF area and our costs of doing just those TIFs areas. And the way that statute is worded is it says they may, not they shall or will, but they may reimburse the treasurer and the assessor for our costs. So early stages, I met with the city and I met with the port, and they've agreed, both Josie and I met with them, they've agreed to reimburse us for our expenses incurred for just those TIF parcels. Now, this year, that's extremely minimal. We'll be putting together a thing that by the end of the year, we'll send an invoice to them, but it's very, very minimal this year because literally Darigold is one parcel, right? And there was no increase in the values of the parcels to any degree for the tax area, the TIF area out where Pasco is, because there was no development yet to any degree by the 1st of July or the end of July. This next year, there'll be considerable amount of time that has to be spent out there, and we will back bill them for that. I just can't begin to guess or tell you what that will be. But it will be whatever the time is spent for them on their TIF areas, we will bill them back for.
And you're saying it's only TIF areas?
Correct. It's the only thing that
So
we
school
may.
districts, all the other beneficiaries, none of them?
None of them do we, under statutory rights, have the ability to do that. Now, should the commissioners want to negotiate with their boards, I assume that you could probably do that. But we don't have the statutory right to go bill or invoice or approach them for the funds from my office, other than the TIF, and we did. Right up front, we went right to them.
You have questions?
Yep.
Commissioner Mullen?
What were you, I'm sorry, can you repeat that again as far as?
Well, each of the taxing boards, for instance, the school boards, they tax. And so do they pay anything towards our office? No. The library district doesn't pay anything. The city of Pasco doesn't pay anything. Hospital District 1, Fire District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, none of them pay anything to my office or help reimburse the costs for the operating of my office to the county.
But they benefit from it.
Well, they all benefit because it's a statutory obligation for the county to provide that.
Yes.
Yeah. So and, you know, I would love to be able to back bill every one of the taxing districts for a piece of it. It would make it very, very simple for my budgeting process for my office,
Yep.
for meeting that. But again, the only one statutorily we have the right to even request them to do is the TIF areas, and we have done that and gotten an agreement from them.
Okay. Go ahead.
Permission to speak, Chair. So would you say, because our county is growing so quickly, this is kind of one of the negative effects of a growing county and a staff that's not, that's
You're
been
always
pretty stagnant.
behind.
Yeah. So, I mean,
And
it's-
when you're, I mean, let's just face it, when you've got inflation growing the way it is, you've got costs growing the way they are, and the county, the best they can do is a 1% on the budget and new construction, you can't keep up. You just can't do it. You will continually, and believe me, I dealt with budgets that were 3 times bigger than this county budget. So, if you don't get a return on the investment and you don't have revenues coming in that offset the expenses, something's got to give. We're not like the federal government. We're not like the state at the county government level. We're just not. We're really restricted at the county. You know, the state and federal government need their hands tied more, and the county really needs their hands loosened a little bit more. It'd be nice if we were able to kind of shift some of that from the Fed and the state to the counties.
Well, and there's one other burden that's being put on us that is uncalled for as far as I'm concerned, and that is the climate change tax that has been put on there.
Absolutely.
And that is hurting every resident in Franklin County.
Yep. Yeah, across the whole state.
Yes.
Really, I mean, even the people in the big cities don't realize how much it's hurting them. They just don't. They just swallow that pill.
Yep.
But if you had to take and buy 15 or 20,000 gallons at one whack, you'd notice it real quick or more. And they just don't, because they're doing it from tank to tank to tank.
Right.
So, yeah. I definitely feel for you. I feel for the employees in the county and the taxpayers, if you think about it, because the services that they're expecting from the county, they're expecting a certain level of services from us, and it's very difficult to provide those services with the restrictions that's on the counties. Just, it's difficult. So.
Tim, where we're at today and looking into the future, which doesn't look good, it almost seemed like you would want to get in front of where we're headed, and that's we're going to be behind even more every year down the road. Do you think it'd be wise to put a hiring freeze on the county at this time?
That's a tough question. I mean, certainly it would ensure that we have some of those savings that we that we had this year.
Because it was mentioned in the presentation, that's why I was asking.
It was. I mean, I was trying to come up with
Solution.
about as many solutions as I could possibly think of things to do. I mean, certainly without some drastic changes down the road, I mean, I think you'd have to think about something along those lines, because if expenses continue to outpace revenues, you know, we're going to be in the same boat every year.
And we're looking at COLA increases for the employees that are here. I mean, everything's working against us. And that's the toughest thing there is as a farmer, when your costs keep mounting up and you're not getting any revenue in, which we're seeing that right now down in the farming community, you just got to find ways that you're going to cut to make it work. And I think we're in that position. And if we don't get a grip on it now, it's going to get worse in the future.
Your freezes, though, would be a temporary
Yeah,
plug at this moment. You'll still continue to go the wrong direction.
Right.
And not provide, and probably have more turnover, and then have more costs in the long run for retraining and re-equipping and so all of that weighs into it. I mean,
Yep.
you still gotta plant them crops and pay for the harvest, even if it isn't that great. And if you don't get anything out of the crop, out of the field, so. If I can be so bold as to make a suggestion to the commissioners that is really unfavorable, I think the taxpayers need to make a decision on this. I really think this has gone so far that I don't think 3 commissioners should be forced with making a choice of what the taxpayers need to make. And they need to decide what are they willing to pay for what services that they're expecting to get. And the only way I know to do that is a lid lift. I am totally opposed to taxation, gentlemen, but I'm also a realist when it comes to paying wages, growing a county, keeping up with the costs, and providing services. And if the county citizens are expecting a certain level of service, and the state mandates in many ways that we give that level of service, that's one of the biggest problems, is unfunded mandates, till maybe we can get the legislator to look at that. I think that's atrocious what we get stuck doing there. But other than that, I think the citizens need to be said, these are the services that are going to be impacted, and many of them will be, or you have to consider taking the county. I'm not talking about every tax, but the county is currently at 85 cents. If you do number 1, you're going to be down at 70 cents. The county's statutory limit is $1.80, and we were there 10, 12 years ago. We need to have that up 15, 20, 25 cents, somewhere in there, to operate this county. And I'm not saying, in fact, I am saying, this should not be a decision on the commissioners. This should be the taxpayers making that decision whether they do or don't want it. It's really up to them. Here's the bottom line, folks. You want it, that you're going to have to pay for it. That's why Hospital District 1 did that. That's why Fire District 3 attempted to do it. And I am sure other taxing districts are going to attempt to do it in the very near future.
when you say Fire District 3, did that fail?
That failed.
Well, I know that Hospital District 1, I talked to one of the people there in that organization, and it was Sunday at church, and she says, well, I know you didn't vote for it. And I said, yes, I did vote for it. Because if I'm in need of an ambulance, I want to make sure that ambulance is going to show up. And I think you're right, John. I think it's the people's.
It's got to be the people.
People have to make the decision. 3 commissioners, it's not right for us just to keep in. And to shift the money away from the roads, when I see the roads, the shape they're in out there, they need help. They need money. And you've got goods and services that are coming out of that North Franklin area, and we got to have a road system to get them out, and they're getting beat up.
You just wouldn't be able to get it to the people before you need a budget and have to pass a budget and do what you got to do this year. But listen, commissioners, for you to make the decision, let's face it, it's political suicide for the 3 of you to make that kind of a decision. It needs to be the public, and it shouldn't be on your shoulders. I know if I was sitting in your place, that's what I would say. And as the assessor, which I get blamed for all the increase in assessed values until they go to sell their place, and then they love that value. And we're seeing that like crazy right now. I'm seeing $500,000 pieces that we have assessed, they're selling for $550,000 now, which I'm kind of chuckling over. But we have to follow the state laws. We have to provide certain services that are mandated, and we don't get funding for it. Therefore, if the people want it, because there's very little you can cut and not provide for a service. So I just think that you commissioners should not have that on your shoulders. I think the people need to choose.
And I would agree with John. I think that, we were having such great years of sales tax, and now with it slowing down, but we also have a slowdown in sales tax, but also a inflation that's just sky high. So they're going in opposite directions. And so having just a 1% cap on property tax when, other than new construction, I mean, it just isn't. I mean, you saw earlier in the slide the change in, how much sales tax versus property tax, and sales tax, they were great years, but it's definitely catching up, and we'll be passing property taxes going at this rate. I mean, ultimately, I think property taxes do need to be reevaluated through a lid lift to get back into the range that would be more sustainable for the county. I just think that, because I agree with John too, that I think that a lot of departments, if anything, would probably say that they need more people, if anything, other than, I mean, I think certainly if this went to the voters and got shot down, you'd be looking at having to do some staffing changes. But I think most departments would argue that they're not overstaffed, that they need people. And so, it's, I mean, ultimately you'd have to look at it eventually, but I think that going to the voters for a lid lift is I mean, and ultimately, yeah, it wouldn't be your decision at that point. It's the voters that have to decide whether they want that or not. And ultimately, if it did fail, then, and I will say too that it doesn't solve this year's budget either, because we wouldn't be able to get it out. We wouldn't be able to get it out for the 2024 budget. It would be for the 2025 budget potentially. And so we still have problems to solve as far as the 2024 budget, but at least moving for the future, if we could get it approved, then it can solve some of our longer term problems.
So on a $500,000 home, if we did a 30-cent, I don't know what it would be, lid lift, but let's just say a 30-cent lid lift. $150 a year increase. That's my home. I gladly, if I wasn't working in here whatsoever to keep the services that this county has to have, would gladly pay another $150. Now, I can tell you right now that I'm going to get a decrease just from the city of Pasco because their levy rate's going down this year, and ours just dropped. So out of that 30 cents, I guess basically it would be 30 off the 70, and I'm there's 14.9 cents coming off. So it's really a $75 increase next year over what this year's was, because we're depending on which one you do, it's anywhere from a 2 cent to a 14.9 cent drop per thousand on what you're talking about for the county's budget.
But I think the public needs to understand what services we actually do provide,
I'm gonna lay it out.
which a large part of that is public safety.
It is huge,
Yes.
yeah.
And in public safety is the clearing of snow off of roads, and if we steal from the road budget, we're hindering that ability to be done. And John, to tell you on that sale of that house for 500 or whatever it is, whatever the increase is, it's short-lived when they get the capital gains tax they got to pay off of what they bought it for and what they sold it for.
Well, they wouldn't be paying, they'd be paying the 2% that they put in, so they gotta pay a 2% on it, but the capital gains, it would fall underneath that limit right now. But yeah, there's a 2% you gotta pay when you
What
come
I'm
in
saying
here to
is
the treasurer right off the bat.
The state, they
I know
got their
it.
capital gains tax that they hit you with.
Yep,
So it's
Yeah.
a,
Again, that's the state and the feds, and the county's the
A
one left
no-win
in the,
situation.
holding
Yep.
the bill and having to pay it. So,
well, we're not looking for a decision today. This is just presentation. When do we have to
Yeah.
have this decision made by?
Ultimately, we meet to adopt the budget on December 4th, which is a Monday. And then that can be extended for 5 days. So we can go from December 4th to 8th. But I mean, ultimately, so no, we don't need necessarily a decision today. And Mike can reach out to you, to kind of figure out the direction. But I mean, certainly if we have a direction that we're leaning towards, I I know we're missing one commissioner today, but I mean, as far as trying to move forward in this and getting things balanced, the sooner we have direction to move, you know, we're not trying to put things together at the last minute. So, but ultimately, the plan is to adopt on December 4th, but like I said, it can be extended for 5 days, from Monday through Friday.
The county's piece can be extended. The other taxing districts that submit to your office, they have to be approved that day. Or my office is locked up on what we can't give them then for the '24 budget.
And that's November 30th, right, John?
No, it has to be to your office by the November 30th. It has to be
Yeah.
before the commissioners on the 4th, and they
Yeah.
have to approve that. And that's just a matter of the different taxing districts and what their budget amount they want, and the commissioners pass it. Then it allows my office to use those amounts for the levy rate. Okay? So, because if you don't pass anything for them, you literally are, other than the ones that are voted in, they don't get any money. So. And we've worked with Mike's office, because it's your office, the commissioner's office, that has to have that presented to you. But I've met with them because they're all new, to be able to bring them up to speed on what they have to have.
Is there any way to get this page right here? Because even with my glasses, I'm having a hard time. Can we get it enlarged? Can we get everything enlarged? Are you having a problem with that?
It's pretty hard to read.
It's tiny.
So.
Fenny has the original
11 by
file.
17, I'll go down and have it printed on 11 by 17, rapidly for you. And then if you just want to swing by my office, we'll hand it to you. How's that?
Sounds good.
Yep.
And these are our options. 5 different options, six versions.
I mean, I had some other solutions on other pages too, as far as different actions that can be taken.
And that's what I'm trying to figure this out, is because version 1 is no 1% increase, new construction, no road shift, but yet, do we get to a balanced budget?
No,
Where does it state that at? I mean, I'm trying to figure this out.
these are just possible things to do on the property tax side. But even at, I mean, if I go back to,
Even if you did version 6, there's going to be a small shortage.
yeah, yes, you are correct. What slide was it? Oh, so on this one, so if you did all of these requests, you're at negative $2.4 million. Well, the road shift is even with the road shift at the end of $2 million. I mean, that's a $2 million road shift. So it's still, we'd still be at a negative even with that road shift, and if we were covering all of those expenses listed right there. We're in some bad inflation times, I think, right now.
So with the road shift, what is their budget with that 2 million?
They would have started with $4,159,000 pre-road shift, and then post-road shift, they'd have $2,159,000. Yes, correct. Not half of their budget. They get other funding as well. That's just half of their property tax. They get other funding from grants, and they get a large part from grants and gas tax, and they do have some other revenue sources besides just this. This is a large piece of their budget, but
but
it's
on
not
those-
the entirety.
On those grants, though, they've got to have, a lot of those are matching funds. If they don't have the
Correct.
matching funds, we don't get the grant.
Correct.
And our road shift this year was what, 350,000?
Correct.
That would be keeping with version 3, I believe, if you didn't move anything at all. we didn't have a preference at all putting this together for you. We're just trying to give you what the options are and what it would do to the levy rates and your budgets.
Yeah.
It is when and if you can.
Well, now, to correct that, according to Mr. Davidson, you never can get rid of a complete road shift. There has to be a portion that is shifted for some reason. Can somebody enlighten me on that? Dwayne Davidson brought this point out to me. He says you can never really get rid of the and maybe that has to do with between the shift and the diversion?
That's new to me. That's
I'll
nothing
check.
that I'm not aware of that.
I'm gonna check with Dwayne on that, because he says you can never get rid of it completely.
Might be the diversion piece. I don't know. We don't deal
Yeah.
with that in our office.
The man's, he's got a
He's sharp.
computer for a brain. He is very sharp. I'll check with him on that. In fact, probably tomorrow or Thursday I can.
But this was just that last slide was just one of the solutions listed that ultimately a lot of these would require, doing multiple things to try to get in balance. So I mean, it would be, doing the property tax and even potentially some other actions as well to get us. And I do want to mention too that of the requests listed, I mean, I listed these are some of the higher requests, but it's certainly not the entirety of the requests. And I think that there's probably, even outside of this, I think there's probably some valid requests that are, absolutely needs to the county. For example, in elections, we're running a presidential election, so there's increased costs related to that. It didn't make the list because no individual cost was had increased that much, but certainly we're going to be spending money on an election. So, like I say, this isn't everything.
This is a short version, but we really need our departments to really sharpen their pencils and look and see where we can maybe decrease the amount that's requested. Because we are in a, and I don't think I know we're not the only county in this kind of situation, because everybody's been hit with inflation. So, and I've seen it a lot worse than this back in the late 70s when it hit 20% interest rates. That was a really rough time for a lot of people, and we're heading that direction. So, I think we best wait for all three commissioners when we make this decision, and I think this has been thank you very much. That was fast. Where's the easy button?
Yeah, I've only got 2 of them.
I asked for just 2 for you too.
Oh, you taxed her?
Yes.
Oh, so did I.
Oh.
So she hadn't got mine yet. I said I need 5.
Oh,
Oh, that's a lot better. I can almost see that with the naked eye.
sorry, Michael.
It's okay. I've got my.
Mike's young.
I've
He's got good
no,
eyes.
It's my bifocal contacts.
Well, the other thing is you could get it via email, and then you can enlarge it on your screens too, so.
I'm sorry, commissioners, I should have provided the magnifying glasses with.
I do remember my grandfather had the reading Remember that thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think bifocals are for?
So today is the 14th. We got time yet. So we don't need to be making some decisions today. I think we need to probably take a moment and let this digest a little bit
Yep.
because it's not looking the sun doesn't gonna look like it's too bright tomorrow when we get up.
Well, if you could see where there's an increase in revenues in the future, a high probability of it, then of course you have your, not contingency, but your reserves that you certainly Tim had mentioned to be able to pull some on those a little bit too to help offset it. So, but
Yeah.
you got to be looking at where's the revenue going to come from then in the future, because you got to start building back.
Though that's the key is
Yep.
this is, whatever we do, this is short term. We got to
Yep.
start looking long term.
Totally.
And that's why revenue coming off the HAPL would be a welcome sight. And I'm hoping that HWL will start to bring in some revenue off of that HAPL center.
Absolutely. So I think they're off to a pretty good start.
Yep.
But just to chime in a little bit, working with the various departments, the pressure really is coming, like Tim said, it's from public safety. When we've seen it in OPD, we've had to inject $550,000 of ARPA funding. The PA's office, they're seeing a tremendous amount of wage pressure. I mean, we've given them 10% bonuses so their folks don't leave. We've had to give the $5,000 bonus so those folks stay in place. So that the wage pressure for the lawyers is just tremendous. Had a chance to talk with Larry the other day, Larry Ziegler, our manager of OPD. A homicide case is going for minimum $25,000. In our budgeting software, I just approved probably 5 cases that were just 25 grand a pop. It's unbelievable how much that has increased. So the wage pressure that it's putting on us, the unfunded mandates coming from the west side to provide things like translation services. If you have a couple that may not speak English, both sides need a translator. That's a tremendous cost. Just on the OPD side, you have to have a certain level of felony, so that's a higher class of attorney. So that's another set of wage pressure. In terms of finding a starting PA, you can't start them at 85,000 anymore. It's not realistic. You have to start them in the 6-figure range because that's the expectation. So you look at corrections, the revolving door, that's been a little bit, and trying to hire those folks at a higher wage and keeping them stable. I mean, fortunately, our deputies have been really stable over in the sheriff's department, so there hasn't been a tremendous amount of turnover there. But trying to keep corrections officers and they could work in Grant County for $20,000 more. But what's happening over in the sheriff's office is you're having a tremendous amount of public records requests, so that's putting pressure on overtime. The overtime for our corrections officers who, are woefully understaffed. So, you've got 5-6 guys on a shift for 200 plus inmates. It's there's a tremendous amount of wage pressure there. So and these are staffing levels that are mandated by the state. So I think ultimately I think it is going to be up to our taxpayers, because the way I look at it, it's really going to come to a safety issue because we've got cases stacking up on the defense side, and we've already seen it across the country. Judges are starting to let people go.
Yep.
So what's going to happen, and this is something I've been trying to educate the public on, and keeping in touch with our legislators, keeping it on our social media platforms, keeping it in the media, is that ultimately it's going to come to a public safety issue because we simply are going to get to the point where we can't pay for it anymore. And the state is going to mandate us to do these functions because that's what we do here. The 70% of our budget, would you say, is public safety in some respect. The other part is rural roads. I had a conversation with some of our work crew that works on the roads, and we were talking budgeting and some of the options that we're looking at budget-wise. And we've got guys that have been working North County roads for 20 years who are just as frustrated as us that we've got to take this road shift potentially and have potholes in the road that they're having to do patchwork on. So it's, and they were passionate about it. Because they've been plugging away at these roads for 20 years. So they're just as frustrated as anybody else. So ultimately, again, we dislike taxes, but I think it's something that we've got to look at. I've had a conversation with Consor, who's doing our our financial study, and you know, they presented those numbers to us, and what they had a $5 to $7 million deficit coming over the next few years, and you know, their recommendation, and the only realistic thing that they saw was to look at that, but it has to be packaged right. I mean, it has to, you know, we really have to educate the public on what's at stake. And to me, it's all about public safety. That's our bailiwick, public safety, and those rural roads, because those rural roads are millions upon millions of economic development dollars when you think about the farmers that are out there and how they're crumbling. So, I mean, ultimately, that would be my job to kind of articulate that vision. But so they got to make a decision because we're growing so fast. I mean, John and Tim see it like our growth is outpacing what we can provide anymore. So, you know, the rubber has literally met the road, I think, at Franklin County. And, you know, it's fortunate to have growth, but the unfunded mandates and just the demands from the public, the more people you have, the more crimes they're going to commit. And we're in a unique jurisdiction to where we have to provide these specialized translation services and some other things that are mandated. So anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox, but I just think the rubber has met the road, you know, and I can definitely see it in my short time here. I mean, it's just, we don't have the money, and we can't. And the other thing is, you know, people, the ARPA funds, and I know I've been personally criticized for the ARPA funds, but when we have a 30+ attrition rate when people are leaving, we have to keep our employees. You know, that's part of it. I mean, the other thing is we can't use ARPA funds to, you know, fund a lot of the things up here. So, and ultimately the government's going to say, hey, if you don't use these funds, you know, give them back. So, and we can't continue to rely on that. It's like a credit card, you know, it's like ultimately we just got a report back. We still have around $450,000 left in ARPA funds. So, and I think we've utilized those wisely, and we've really helped out a lot of fire districts, and we've been able to expand the campus and help our employees out. But ultimately, we can't continue to rely on that. Yeah. I'm going to hang on to those ARPA funds because I know Larry's going to come knocking at my door again.
Yep.
And OPD, he's already told me, get ready because it ain't stopping. So anyhow.
So from today, our next meeting on the budget would be what day?
December 4th, Monday.
We can't schedule another meeting before that?
We possibly could schedule a special meeting, but I'd have to check on the reporting requirements.
Or could we include it into a commissioner meeting?
We probably, I mean, I don't see any problem with that, you know, having.
Because I don't see no people here, and
Yeah.
Are you allowed to continue this meeting?
That's a good question.
Not adjourn it, just
Yeah.
continue it?
That way the reporting's already done.
Can you get Jeff Briggs on the phone?
Let me
Ask him?
see if I can.
That may shorten up the time that you have to announce.
Because I think the sooner we get this in front of the people's for their decision, and it should be their decision, not the
They
three
won't be
commissioners.
able to,
No, I know,
broad- yeah, broadly.
just letting them know that it's coming down the road.
I
That
really
we're gonna
think
have to
you're
do
right.
this. We're gonna have to do this. We're gonna have to put it to a vote to the people this next year. It'll be on the ballot. And if you want these services, we're gonna have to really continue.
So I believe that either has to be done in February or
Yes.
the primary, I believe. Isn't it? Maybe
Before-
you can do it in the general, I'm not sure which. And that would be something Matt's office would be more familiar with than the PA.
Commissioner, I've got Jeff Briggs on the line from our civil office, and Jeff, I've got you on speakerphone. So we're in a revenue hearing, and so question from Commissioner Didier is: can we continue this hearing without adjourning it, so we can meet again, because we've sort of uncovered a lot of topics and kind of opened Pandora's box, but we'd like to continue the discussion possibly in another meeting, or is an alternative to maybe have an agenda item for discussion in a actual commissioner meeting What's your recommendation on that? So, because obviously we want to let the public know and be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, you can vote to adjourn the meeting. You'd want to know when you're adjourning it to, so you can notify the public of when your next budget meeting is going to be.
And that was our concern, the reporting requirements. So, and I guess the question was, if we don't, can we continue it without adjourning, without having to re-notify? We're not trying to get around anything. We just want to make sure that we're above board.
Yeah, however you characterize it, you want to make sure that the public's informed. So either, adjourning it and then specifying when the date will be when you'll reopen the meeting. So saying we're adjourning this until next Thursday at 10. Or you could, adjourn it for the time being and then without a specified date, but then you'd want to notice that. So 24 hours in advance of the hearing,
Okay.
you'd want to make sure that the public was notified.
So my understanding is that this had to be notified 2 weeks ahead of time because it was a revenue hearing. So I don't know if there'd be another special provision because December 4th is when we're supposed to make the final decision. So we have some time, obviously, but. And I know you're on the, I know this is all on the fly. We're putting you on the spot, so we appreciate it. We hear the fingers going, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
That's appropriate.
I think it'd be better if we had a date in mind to postpone the
Okay.
hearing or adjourn it until
Okay.
a specified date. If we don't know, then we just want to notify or notice that in advance of the hearing.
Okay. So our best bet, so we don't necessarily have to continue with that 2-week notice because we've already noticed it, but what I'm hearing is at minimum 24 hours in advance and hopefully more.
Mike, how about if we make it a discussion item on our October 22nd commissioner meeting? November, yeah, November 22nd.
If Jeff, if we made it a discussion item on the November 22nd meeting, would that suffice? Obviously it'll be noticed as part of it.
Agenda.
Yeah, as part of the agenda. Or would attaching a revenue hearing, could you marry that within a regular agenda or a regular meeting?
Couldn't you do it at the conclusion of it and just continue then the budget at the end of the
Yeah, that's a good idea.
meeting? Then it doesn't interfere.
Assessor John Rosenau had a good idea. Once a regular meeting concludes, can we continue it once that meeting broke? That might be the better option.
To not,
Yeah, that would work. And we've already satisfied the notice requirements for the budget hearing.
Okay. And
And then we're just adjourning it until
so yeah,
until
so
the end of our regular meeting.
but we still would have to notice it separately, right? Yeah. Or
I don't see why you couldn't make it part of the
okay,
notice for that hearing, but you're really noticing it now because you've already noticed it.
right.
And then you're saying you're going to continue it after that hearing. So
Okay,
everyone-
gotcha.
Right.
But and to be extra careful, would there be any harm in letting the public know? And I would rather over communicate than not.
Right.
Okay.
No, I don't think there's any harm in that.
Okay.
Stating that there's going to be, at the end of the next council meeting, there's going to be a continuation of the
Okay.
budget hearing.
Okay. Sounds good. So I think that gives us a good idea. Thanks for letting us put you on the spot.
Oh, sure.
All right. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
so we'll just recess the meeting
Yeah.
until after the commissioner meeting on November 22nd.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, Mike, I know all the departments are very conscientious of spending. But do the department heads have meetings where that they're
I don't think that's happening right now. I can check with each individual department head and elected official from a belt tightening perspective. You know, we've been,
There's solutions out there that
yeah, I mean,
We do that monthly in my office, Rocky. And I think we'll probably be turning back in. Last year we turned in, this year I think it's 60,000 or so we'll be turning back in because we don't want to use it and abuse it. Like I said early on, there's wants and there's needs. I won't present wants to you guys. I just won't do it.
I appreciate that, but what I'm saying is sometimes procedurally.
Yes.
There are more efficient ways to do things that we either overlooked or have taken for granted, and
Yeah, and we did some of that by internal mailings ourselves. We paid more for postage, but we paid less for processing. We had the staff and everybody just pitched in and did it. We were licking envelopes, or I should say with wet rags the other day, because the envelopes with the V that won't go through our machine were cheaper than the ones that would go through the machine. So literally, everybody piled in, and we went through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those with cups of water and rags to try to save. And did it save a whole bunch? No, but it did save, and we got it out, a week and a half quicker than trying to get a master's touch or somebody to do it. And where we weren't doing 30,000, we could do that. If you're doing big bulk stuff, you can't do it. You just don't have staff to. Yeah. That's a little example, but yes.
So on this list here that we're looking at right now, I would ask Information Services if we could do a progression on the Microsoft 365. I'd ask the sheriff if he could possibly buy his uniforms out of his foundation money. We're just start asking people, do we need all of this year? Because every penny, every dollar, and there's no budget dust here now.
I know
We
when
need some budget dust.
when I speak to the constituents, they're always asking me how we can cut some of our spending, not so much increasing.
And
But that's always the biggest question, is like, what are you doing with the money? Where can we cut that could save the taxpayers some money?
And I'd say at the state and federal level, they're absolutely right. Having come in from the outside into the county, man, I tell you, this county operates tight. It really does, which is impressive.
It is, and
It
I
is, it's
appreciate
impressive.
everybody's hard work. It's
Yep.
just-
I just think that you're gonna, as much as you don't like it or not, when you're seeing inflation at the rates that we're seeing it, I think it's natural that you're gonna see some increased costs as a result of that.
Well, sure, almost everything's doubled,
Yeah.
except for your salary. And so you have all these hardworking people out there that are forced to pay exorbitant prices on things that have jumped exponentially. And they're just,
Just
how
a
do you pay
food
for,
budget.
how do you pay for them?
I'm
Yeah, I
hearing
know, you
some
go to
of
the
my
grocery
staff
store,
talking about
it's
what it did to
$100 a
them this
bag.
year. Yeah.
Well, just today, we're tearing down a fan off of a truck, and the seal on the back side of it is almost $70 just for the seal. And my mechanic said we're gonna reuse that one because it's greasable. So we're looking at means out there to where we're reusing things that we normally wouldn't do because of the cost. It's where we're at today. And we're all gonna have to just sit here in our areas, and we're gonna have to really look and see where we can pinch and save, because I'm with Rocky. I mean, when I talk to our constituents out there, a lot of them don't even have insurance, health insurance. And they're looking at having to cut their budgets in order to put food on the table and heat in the home and pay the rent or the mortgage. And we're gonna have to be like every resident out there. We're just gonna have to get tight.
Chair, and I think it might be wise, and John, you can give me some feedback, maybe with the elected officials, to have Tim present this to them and just have a kind of a
That'd be good.
a chat.
That's why I'm sitting in here. I truly believe it's my obligation to my office and to the taxpayers that am aware and can share what I've got. I think the elected should be informed. Actually, I think they should have been here.
Not just electeds, department heads.
Yeah, and department heads. So I mean, I think we do need to take a look, but But I do agree, John. We run a tight ship here, and it's tough to say. You could potentially have a cut, and I, looking through my old reporter's lens, I mean, it's clearly, I don't think it's anything that any department head or elected officials done. Everybody here really does a good job of trying to balance their budget. It's simply inflation, the number of folks moving to Franklin County, the services we provide, and all these things have just come together and sort of caused the perfect storm, if you will, of just the number of folks out running the actual services that we can provide. So, and this is where, I hate talking about levy lid lifts, but it may be the only solution ultimately. And I think that we have to ask our taxpayers if that's what they want. And the thing
Reestablishes.
Yeah.
Which then, if assessments continue to go up, new construction continues to come in, it'll drive that levy
Right.
rate back down.
And that's
But-
something we really, and I think this next year is really a good opportunity to educate the public on some of those things, on how the levy rate works. And that's something I've subtly tried to do while I'm here is, people have noticed videos of just county government 101, the different places that we
I think
support
we're like
across the district.
$1.70 10 years ago. We're
Yeah.
down in the 70 cents now.
Yeah, so those are some of the educational pieces that we can definitely work on and kind of get the taxpayer educated on how things work, because I think there is a lot of misinformation and a lot of misperception. I mean, I know you guys see it in your office. The assessments don't necessarily equate to a tremendous
Not direct,
increase in
no.
your
I think that'd be good, because when you put it out there in layman's terms where people can understand it,
yeah.
but there's this confusion, but everybody knows their taxes are going up, so it's, you look at the bills that are coming in, they're all the way around, and with inflation,
Yeah, and I think
it's not an easy sell, but Mike, we're asking
Yeah.
you to figure it out.
Yeah, and then, communication's my bailiwick. So, and I think it comes with education and kind of understanding,
Yep.
what you're paying for, and
It was a handoff,
yeah, I know. So that's
Now you've got to get it across.
That's okay. I mean, I know.
At least where you got a first down anyway, Mike.
I'll quarterback this. I need somebody to catch the ball, though. There we go.
I'm not going down the middle no more.
I was going to say,
I'm not going down the middle
No
field
post.
anymore.
I'll get you on a curl, or I'll get you on a little wheel route. Well, how about that?
I still
think
think
you
it's a
can
good
handle it
idea
one-handed.
One-handed.
that
Going
we
post.
ask our department heads to ask their employees if they see different solutions, different ways of doing things. Because I've seen it happen numerous times where people thought, I'm so efficient, and someone else comes along and says, well, they do it this way, and he says, I don't care. They're still not as efficient as I am until they go watch them, and then they're just standing there going, I've been doing it wrong.
I think it's worth a conversation. So
Yes, and I think the employees, they have a better visual of what's the inner workings are, and they might say, you know what, we could do it better or faster if we did it this way. And those are the types of ideas that I would be interested in, because it might not end up being a lot of savings, but right now, I think we need every penny we can get, and to be as efficient as possible. And those ideas are going to come from our employees and the people in the county that are working hard and do a great job. And just sometimes they don't speak up if they're not asked. And so I think we need to ask everyone for their ideas and at least hear them out. So.
We all know the alternative. If we don't get this thing under wrapped, then next thing we're gonna have layoffs. And that'll be even worse. So with that, I think we've had a good discussion today, a lot of information. Need to just sit back and digest it. I think I'm gonna get into Tim's ear here tomorrow, or talk to him more. But, and encourage Commissioner Mullen to do the same. There's the numbers, man, right there. So if there's no more questions or comments, then we will recess until after the commissioners' meeting on November 22nd.
Thanks.